Welcome to our channel, where we bring you the most spine-chilling tales and unsettling true stories. Today, we have a real story, the haunting of Sweetwater High School. Sit back, but not too comfortably, as we dive into this unnerving narrative. Sweetwater High School, a prestigious institution nestled in the heart of a sleepy suburban town, was normally known for its excellent academic reputation and dedicated student body. But as the final year of the senior class dawned, an ominous cloud hung over the campus. Strange occurrences began to plague the students, setting the stage for an unforgettable and terrifying adventure. Jess, a bright and attractive girl with an unshakable sense of curiosity, couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. She noticed her classmates acting oddly, whispering in corners and avoiding eye contact. Even the teachers seemed on edge, exchanging nervous glances and whispering amongst themselves. As if all of this weren't enough, Jess had also been having vivid nightmares, filled with haunting images of a figure wearing a gas mask and carrying a sinister-looking knife. One morning, Jess was walking to her first class when she spotted her friend Nate, a quiet but reliable boy with a knack for computers, huddled over his phone, looking pale and shaken. When Jess asked him what was wrong, he told her about the mysterious figure he had seen lurking around the school grounds. The figure had been wearing a gas mask and seemed to be following him. Jess felt a chill run down her spine but assured Nate that everything would be okay. Throughout the day, Jess and Nate exchanged glances, both feeling increasingly uneasy about the situation. As the final bell rang, they decided to investigate the reports of disappearances and the gas mask-wearing figure together. They met up after school and began their search, retracing the steps of the missing students and combing the school grounds for any sign of the masked figure. After hours of fruitless searching, they decided to take a break and head to the school's abandoned attic. It was said that the attic contained all sorts of forgotten relics from the school's past, including a hidden room that only a few students knew about. As they climbed the creaky stairs and pushed open the dusty door, they were greeted by an eerie silence and the flickering light of a lone candle. The room itself was small and cramped, with walls covered in faded posters and occult symbols. In the center of the room stood a massive stone altar, adorned with candles, blood-stained ritual tools, and a skull. Jess gasped as she noticed a familiar figure sitting cross-legged in the corner, hugging her knees and rocking back and forth. It was Alex, a friend of theirs who had been acting strangely ever since a traumatic event at a summer camp the previous year. Jess and Nate exchanged worried glances before carefully approaching her. As they drew closer, they could see that Alex's eyes were vacant and her skin had taken on an unhealthy pallor. "Alex, are you okay?" Jess asked softly, taking a step closer. There was no response. "Alex, can you hear me?" she repeated, her voice trembling. Suddenly, Alex's head snapped up, and her eyes locked on Jess with an unsettling intensity. She hissed through clenched teeth, "They're coming. Soon. We must prepare." Before Jess or Nate could react, Alex lunged at them, her hands clawed into claws and her lips curled back in a snarl. As Jess and Nate stumbled backward in surprise, they caught a glimpse of the figure in the gas mask, standing in the shadows at the foot of the altar. The figure raised a menacing blade and advanced toward them, hissing through the filter of the gas mask, "It's time to play your final game." Terror gripped Jess and Nate as they realized that they had stumbled upon a dark and dangerous secret that threatened not only their lives, but the very fabric of their sleepy suburban town. With nowhere else to run and no one else to turn to, Jess and Nate must find a way to unravel the mysteries surrounding the gas mask-wearing figure, Alex's transformation, and the strange events plaguing the school. The clock is ticking, and failure is not an option. For in the shadows, an ancient evil stirs, and it won't rest until it has claimed them all. As Jess and Nate continued their investigation into the strange occurrences at Sweetwater High School, they followed a trail of clues that led them deeper into the heart of darkness. Their initial discovery of the hidden room in the attic had only been the beginning. Now, they were about to uncover a much more sinister secret that had been hidden beneath the school for decades. Their search eventually brought them to a forgotten section of the library, where they found a hidden panel that revealed a hidden staircase leading downwards. As they descended into the darkness, the air grew colder and more musty, and they could sense that they were entering a part of the school that hadn't seen the light of day for many years. Finally, they emerged into a massive underground chamber, lit only by flickering candles placed strategically around the room. The chamber was filled with row upon row of dusty old bookshelves, each one packed with ancient tomes and leather-bound volumes. As they cautiously made their way through the labyrinth of shelves, they realized that they were in a secret library, hidden beneath the school. The books here dealt with topics that were far more sinister and disturbing than anything they had ever encountered before: demonology, necromancy, and other dark arts. It didn't take long for them to piece together the truth about what was happening at Sweetwater High. The mysterious figure they had seen lurking around the school, Mr. Blackwood, had been involved in some sort of dark ritual during his time as principal. He had delved deep into the occult, and in doing so, had unwittingly summoned a powerful demon that had consumed his soul. Now, he was back from the dead, seeking revenge on those who had betrayed him. As Jess and Nate continued to explore the library, they found a hidden diary belonging to Mr. Blackwood, in which he had recorded his descent into madness and his obsession with ancient rituals. The pages were filled with twisted drawings of demons and chilling accounts of the things he had done in the name of power. They also discovered a series of hidden rooms, each one containing relics and artifacts that seemed to be linked to the demonic forces at work. Meanwhile, the rest of the students were growing increasingly uneasy as the body count continued to rise. Alex, the boy they had seen acting strangely since his encounter with the demon at summer camp, had begun to exhibit even more disturbing behavior. He was sleepwalking through the halls at night, muttering incoherently in strange languages and occasionally disappearing for hours at a time. The other students began to suspect that he might be involved in whatever was happening, and they started to avoid him. As tensions within the school reached a boiling point, Jess and Nate knew that they had to confront Mr. Blackwood and put an end to his reign of terror. Armed with their newfound knowledge of the occult, they prepared themselves for a final showdown with the vengeful spirit. The fate of Sweetwater High School hung in the balance, and only they had the courage to face the darkness and save their friends. The climactic confrontation between Jess, Nate, and Mr. Blackwood took place in the school's abandoned gymnasium, where they managed to trap the demonic spirit in a circle of salt. As they chanted ancient incantations, the air grew thick with an unearthly energy, and the walls of the gym seemed to shimmer and distort. Finally, with a blast of hellish wind, the demon was banished back to whatever dark realm it had emerged from. As the dust settled, Jess and Nate emerged from the gym, covered in sweat and exhaustion, but triumphant. The other students, who had gathered outside, broke into spontaneous applause, grateful that their school had been saved. Alex, who had been in the gym with them, seemed to have returned to his normal self, and he hugged Jess and Nate tightly, grateful for their bravery. In the aftermath of the battle, the school board decided that Sweetwater High School was beyond repair, and it was eventually shut down. Jess and Nate, now hailed as heroes, went on to attend a new school together, their bond of friendship strengthened by the ordeal they had shared. As for Alex, he chose to move away and start a new life, determined to put his own terrifying experiences behind him. The memory of what they had faced at Sweetwater High would haunt Jess and Nate for the rest of their lives, but they took comfort in the knowledge that they had saved not only their own lives, but the lives of everyone they cared about. The horrors they had faced would forever be etched into their memories, a testament to the power of darkness and the importance of standing together against it. As the school year draws to a close, the remaining students of Sweetwater High find themselves increasingly on edge. The once familiar halls now seem to hum with an eerie tension, and the shadows seem to lurk in every corner. The recent disappearances and gruesome murders have left everyone feeling uneasy and vulnerable. Jess and Nate, who have been working tirelessly to uncover the truth behind the recent events, decide to gather the other students together for a seance. They believe that if they can contact the spirits of the dead, they might be able to unravel the mystery surrounding Sweetwater High once and for all. The other students are reluctant at first, but as the death toll rises, they eventually agree to participate. The seance is held in the school's abandoned auditorium, lit only by candles and flickering stage lights. Jess and Nate lead the group in a series of chants and rituals, hoping to summon the spirits of the departed. As they work, an unsettling silence falls over the group, punctuated only by the occasional shiver or whisper. Finally, after what seems like an eternity, Jess believes she feels a presence in the room. "Is anyone there?" she asks, her voice barely above a whisper. There is no reply, but the air seems to thicken, and the temperature in the room drops significantly. Nate takes Jess's hand, squeezing it reassuringly as they continue with the seance. Finally, they feel a cold, clammy hand grasp theirs, and a disembodied voice speaks through the darkness. "I am here," the voice says, dripping with malevolence. "Who disturbed my rest?" Jess and Nate exchange nervous glances before responding. "We seek answers," Jess says, her voice quavering. "We want to know what happened to our friends. and why these things are happening. There is a long pause before the voice speaks again. You seek the truth of Sweetwater High? It asks, its tone chilling. Jess and Nate nod in unison. Very well, the voice continues. But be warned, the truth is not for the faint of heart. It will consume you, just as it has consumed so many others before you. As the voice speaks, Jess and Nate feel themselves being drawn deeper into the spirit world. They see visions of the past, of a secret society that operated within the school, dedicated to summoning an ancient demon. They see the faces of the students who have been killed, their souls being drained to fuel the demon's power. And they see Alex, standing before them, his eyes glowing with an unholy light. Alex ... No. Nate whispers, his voice barely audible. It wasn't him. It wasn't his fault. The vision fades, and the spirit's voice booms through the darkness once more. Your friend Alex has been possessed, the voice says, by the spirit of my master, the one who taught me all that I know. He is no longer in control of his own actions. Jess and Nate exchange worried glances, their hearts racing. They know that if they don't find a way to stop Alex, or free him from the possession, more people will die. They also know that if they try to confront him, they may not make it out alive. The seance ends, and the other students file out of the auditorium, visibly shaken by what they have witnessed. Jess and Nate linger behind, lost in thought. They know what they must do next, but they are unsure of how to proceed. As they debate their options, they hear a faint rustling coming from the shadows. Turning, they see Alex emerging from the darkness, his eyes wide and vacant. Alex, Nate says, taking a step forward. It's going to be okay. We're here for you. But Alex doesn't respond. His expression remains blank as he lunges at them, his hands clawing at their throats. In a desperate attempt to save themselves, Jess and Nate manage to push Alex away, sending him careening into a nearby stack of chairs. They take a moment to catch their breath, their hearts pounding wildly in their chests. We have to stop him, Jess says, her voice barely above a whisper. We have to find a way to free him from this demon's grasp. Nate nods in agreement, but the look on his face betrays his fear. They know that their lives, and the lives of everyone else at Sweetwater High, hang in the balance. The only question now is how far they're willing to go to save their friend, and uncover the truth about the dark secrets that lie hidden within the walls of their school. The final bell rings, signaling the end of another tumultuous day at Sweetwater High. The senior class, now a fraction of its former size, trudges out of classrooms and hallways, their faces etched with exhaustion and fear. They know that this is it. Tonight, they will face the demon that has been haunting their school and their town. Jess and Nate, still reeling from the events of the last few days, exchange worried glances as they walk side by side. They have managed to convince the remaining students of the danger they'll face, and now it's up to them to put a stop to it. Their eccentric history teacher, Mr. Jenkins, has agreed to help them, despite his initial skepticism. As they make their way to the old gym, they see Alex waiting for them, his face a mask of determination. He looks healthier than he has in days, his eyes clear and focused. They know that the demon is still inside him, but they also know that he is their best chance at defeating it. The group files into the gym, taking seats on the dusty blue bleachers. Mr. Jenkins sets up a makeshift altar at the center of the floor, adorned with candles, sacred symbols, and ancient artifacts. He begins to chant in a language none of them have ever heard, his voice echoing off the walls. The air in the room grows thick with anticipation and fear. Jess and Nate exchange a meaningful look. They know that this is the moment they've been dreading, the moment when they must confront the demon and risk everything to save their town. They take a deep breath and join Mr. Jenkins at the altar. Together, they begin the exorcism. As they chant and wave their hands over the artifacts, the candlelight flickers and dances, casting eerie shadows across the group. Alex, his eyes now closed and his face contorted in pain, serves as a conduit for the ancient power flowing through them. The air in the room grows hot and heavy, and strange whispers fill their ears. They can feel the demon fighting back, struggling to maintain its hold on Alex. The air crackles with energy, and Jess and Nate can feel the pressure building within them. They continue to chant, their voices growing hoarse, their bodies trembling with effort. With a final, agonized scream, the demon is forced from Alex's body. He falls to the ground, limp and lifeless. The room is silent for a moment, before a deafening roar fills the air. They turn to see the ancient demon, a monstrous creature of shadow and fire, looming over them. Its eyes glow with malevolence as it advances on them, its claws tearing chunks of concrete from the floor. The group springs into action. Jess and Nate dash towards the demon, chanting louder than ever, trying to distract it. Mr. Jenkins follows close behind, waving his arms and casting spells. The remaining students scatter, forming a makeshift barricade with desks and chairs. They hurl books and chairs at the creature, doing little more than angering it. As the battle rages on, Jess and Nate feel a surge of power coursing through them. They focus their energy, channeling it into a single, unified strike. Their hands glow with a blinding light, and they launch a combined attack on the demon, striking it directly in the center of its chest. The impact sends the creature flying across the room, crashing through a wall and disappearing into the night. The students breathe a sigh of relief, collapsing to the floor in exhaustion. They turn to see Mr. Jenkins standing in the doorway, his face pale but his expression triumphant. "I think it's safe to say that we've won," he says, his voice barely audible over their ragged breathing. "The demon has been banished from this place." The group looks at each other, a mixture of relief and disbelief on their faces. They've done it. They've saved their town. But they also know that this is not the end. The memories of their friends and classmates who didn't make it will haunt them for the rest of their lives. They vow to never forget what happened here, and to use their experience to help others who find themselves facing the same terrifying forces. As the last rays of sunlight disappear below the horizon, they leave the old gym, their steps lighter and their hearts heavier than they've ever been. But they walk together now, united in their determination to face the future and build a new life for themselves, free from the shadow of the demon. The school grounds were eerily quiet as the remaining students of Sweetwater High School surveyed the destruction wrought by the ancient demon they had inadvertently freed. The once beautiful campus was now a desolate wasteland, buildings reduced to rubble and trees stripped bare. The air was thick with an unnatural gloom, and an unsettling silence hung over everything like a shroud. It was clear that the demon's reign of terror was far from over. Desperate for a way to stop the demon, the group decided to search for the artifact Amelia had mentioned during their last encounter. They split up into smaller teams, each assigned to investigate a different lead. As they spread out across the ravaged town, Jess and Nate found themselves walking side by side, lost in their own thoughts about the past and the uncertain future that lay ahead. "I can't believe this is really happening," Nate muttered, staring at the ruins of the school library. "It was like this place was cursed from the moment Blackwood died." "I know," Jess replied, her voice trembling slightly. "I keep thinking about all the people we've lost. It's just so unfair." "Hey, you guys," Alex called out from a nearby alleyway, waving his arms frantically. "You've got to see this." The pair hurried over to where Alex stood, peering into the shadows of the alley. There, lying in the dirt, was a small, ornate box, its carvings etched with symbols they didn't recognize. "What is it?" Jess asked, crouching down to examine it more closely. "I think it's the artifact Amelia was talking about," Nate replied, his heart racing. "The one that might help us stop the demon." Together, they lifted the box and hurried back to the others, who had already gathered at the town square. The group listened intently as Amelia explained the history of the artifact and how it was used to seal the demon away centuries ago. "To truly defeat the demon," she continued, "you must find the remains of the witches who originally bound it, and use their power against it." The students exchanged glances, realizing the enormity of their task. "Where do we even start?" someone asked. Amelia smiled grimly. "The witches were part of a coven that lived deep in the woods outside of town. The forest has long since grown over their ruins, but their spirits still linger there." She gestured toward the dark, looming trees on the horizon. "If you're brave enough to face them, you may find what you're looking for." The group nodded in unison, their determination clear in their eyes. They knew that this was their only chance to save their town and put an end to the demon's reign of terror. As they began to trudge toward the forest, the sun dipped below the horizon, bathing the world in shadow. The air grew colder, and the leaves rustled ominously in the wind. The further they ventured into the woods, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The trees seemed to close in around them, blocking out all traces of the world they knew. They could feel the eyes of the forest upon them, watching their every move. As they stumbled upon the ruins of the coven's ancient temple, they knew they had reached their destination. Cautiously, they explored the overgrown clearing, searching for any sign of the witch's remains. Their hearts raced as they brushed aside tangles of ivy and vines, revealing ancient stones and crumbling statues. It wasn't long before they stumbled upon a hidden chamber, its walls adorned with symbols and runes. In the center of the room lay a large, circular stone altar, its surface engraved with a map leading to the witch's final resting place. Taking a deep breath, Jess stepped forward and knelt beside the altar. As she studied the map, she could feel the weight of history pressing down upon her. The map led them deep into the heart of the forest, to a secluded glade where the witches had been buried. The air grew thick with a sense of foreboding as they followed the map, their footsteps falling silent on the forest floor. Finally, they emerged from the trees and stood at the edge of a small clearing. In the center lay 5 elaborately carved tombstones, each bearing the name of one of the witches who had bound the demon so long ago. As they approached the tombstones, they could feel the power emanating from them, a tangible force that made the hair on the back of their necks stand on end. Jess stepped forward, her hand trembling as she reached out to touch one of the tombstones. "We're here to stop the demon," she whispered, her voice shaking with determination. "And we need your help." As if in response, the ground began to shudder, and an eerie glow suffused the glade. The students looked on in awe as the tombstones began to rise from the earth, revealing the remains of the witches within. The air was thick with magic, and the forest seemed to hold its breath as the ancient spirits were awakened from their slumber. Amelia stepped forward, her eyes gleaming with power. "We must use the magic of the witches against the demon," she said, her voice steady and commanding. "Each of you must take a fragment of the witch's remains and imbue it with your own strength, your own will to fight." The students exchanged uncertain glances, but they knew there was no other choice. They each took a fragment of bone or a shard of jewelry, feeling the weight of history in their hands. As they focused their energy on the fragments, they began to glow with an ethereal light, a testament to the power that flowed through them. When they were ready, Jess raised her fragment high, its light shining like a beacon in the darkness. "For Sweetwater High," she cried, her voice ringing through the glade, "and all those who have fallen." The others joined her, their voices echoing through the trees as they added their own prayers and pleas for aid. The energy building within them was palpable, and the air crackled with power. As one, they hurled their fragments of bone and jewelry at the demon, unleashing a torrent of magic that engulfed it in a blinding flash of light. When the light faded, the demon was gone, vanished into the ether, and the forest was once more silent. The students stood there for a long moment, catching their breath and trying to comprehend what had just happened. Slowly, they turned to face each other, their eyes meeting in a shared understanding of the sacrifice they had made and the victory they had won. As the sun rose over the horizon, casting its golden light across the newly restored town, the students of Sweetwater High School knew that they had saved their home. They had defeated the demon, and they had done it together. The future might hold many challenges, but they knew that they could face them, for they had proven their strength and their resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. And as they walked back to school, their steps lighter and their hearts full of hope, they knew that they would never forget the bond they had forged in the darkness of the forest, and the power of friendship and courage that had carried them through. The tension in Sweetwater High School is palpable as the senior class prepares for their final days. The students are exhausted from the constant fear and paranormal activity, but they know that their fate lies in their own hands. Jess and Nate, the unlikely heroes of this harrowing tale, stand shoulder to shoulder with their friends, determined to put an end to the demon's reign of terror once and for all. Alex, now free from the possession that once controlled him, is haunted by the memories of his time under the demon's influence. He knows that he must help his friends destroy the creature that caused so much pain and suffering, but he can't shake the feeling that there is something else at play here. Something darker and more sinister than any of them could have imagined. Their history teacher, Mr. Jenkins, has been researching ancient texts and artifacts in hopes of finding a way to defeat the demon. He finally uncovers an artifact that could hold the key to their salvation, a long-lost relic belonging to a coven of powerful witches who had once banished a similar demon from their village centuries ago. In order to destroy the demon haunting Sweetwater High, they must find the witches' remains and use them against the creature. The students gather their courage and set out on a perilous journey to find the witch's tomb, which lies hidden in a remote and desolate graveyard on the outskirts of town. The air is thick with a sense of foreboding as they venture deeper into the forest, the trees closing in around them like sentinels of the night. They can feel the demon's presence growing stronger with each step they take, its malevolent energy seeping into the very fabric of the world around them. As they approach the graveyard, they catch glimpses of the demon lurking among the headstones, its features twisted and hideous. It seems to be waiting for them, toying with them like playthings in a macabre game. The students exchange worried glances but press on, determined to see their quest through to the end. Upon entering the graveyard, They are struck by the sense of ancient power that emanates from the tomb. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and the lingering aroma of incense. The tomb itself is adorned with symbols and runes that seem to dance and shift in the flickering light of their torches. As they approach, they can feel the weight of history bearing down upon them, the knowledge that the fate of their town rests on their shoulders. Jess and Nate, acting as the group's leaders, confer in hushed tones. They must find a way to open the tomb and retrieve the witch's remains without alerting the demon to their presence. They decide that Jess, being the more nimble and agile of the two, should attempt to scale the tomb and unlock the secret passageway that leads to the chamber where the remains are believed to be stored. The others stand guard, weapons at the ready, their eyes fixed on the surrounding forest, waiting for any sign of the demon's approach. Jess, her heart pounding in her chest, begins her ascent up the tomb's weathered surface. The wind picks up, howling through the trees, sending shivers down her spine. She can feel the demon's presence growing stronger, its malevolent energy pressing against her like a physical weight. Finally, she reaches the top of the tomb and finds the hidden passageway. With a deep breath, she steps inside, plunging into darkness. The air is musty and thick with the scent of dust and long-forgotten incense. She can hear the faint sound of her friends' voices calling out to her, their words lost in the echoing chamber. As she moves deeper into the tomb, she comes across a series of trials and challenges designed to test her strength, courage, and resolve. She must solve puzzles and overcome obstacles that have remained untouched for centuries. Each step brings her closer to the witch's remains, but also puts her in greater danger. Finally, she reaches the chamber where the remains are stored. They are arranged in a circle around a large, glowing crystal, which pulses with an otherworldly light. She takes a deep breath, steeling herself for the task ahead. With a shaking hand, she reaches out and picks up one of the remains, feeling a surge of power coursing through her as she does so. As the sun began to rise over Sweetwater High School, a sense of cautious optimism filled the air. The nightmare that had plagued their senior year was finally coming to an end. Jess and Nate, along with the rest of their classmates, gathered in the school's main hall, their hearts pounding with anticipation. They had located the witch's tomb and retrieved their remains, successfully completing the first part of their quest to defeat the ancient demon that had been terrorizing their town. Now, they stood before the entrance to the school, ready to perform the ritual that would banish the demon back to the spirit realm. The group had spent the remainder of the night at the old church, resting and planning their next move. They had also taken the time to mourn the loss of one of their own, Alex, who had sacrificed himself to save them from the demon's grasp. His heroic act weighed heavily on their minds as they prepared for the final confrontation. As they approached the school, they saw Mr. Jenkins waiting for them at the entrance. The history teacher had been invaluable in helping them understand the history of the demon and its origins. He nodded grimly at the group as they approached. "Are you all ready?" he asked solemnly. Jess and Nate exchanged glances before taking a deep breath. "As ready as we'll ever be," Jess replied, her voice wavering slightly. Mr. Jenkins nodded understandingly. "Then let's get started." Together, they walked through the front doors of the school, steeling themselves for what lay ahead. The hallways were eerily quiet, the air thick with a sense of foreboding. As they made their way to the attic, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. But they pushed forward, their determination fueled by the knowledge that they were the only ones who could put an end to this nightmare. When they reached the hidden room where they had first encountered the demon, Jess and Nate paused to catch their breath. The ritual chamber was just as they had left it, the demon's altar still covered in the grisly remains of their former classmates. They exchanged a worried glance before turning their attention to the artifact that would serve as the focal point of the ritual. "All right," Jess said, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. "We need everyone to gather around the altar. We're going to need all your strength for this." The others nodded solemnly and took their places around the altar, each of them holding onto a piece of the witch's remains. Jess and Nate stood in the center, their faces etched with determination. Mr. Jenkins walked over to them, his expression grave. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Amelia could still be out there, and she won't be happy that we've interfered." Jess shook her head. "We have to try," she insisted. "We can't let anyone else die because of this." Nate nodded in agreement. "We've come this far," he said, his voice steady. "We're not turning back now." With a deep breath, Mr. Jenkins stepped back, giving the two friends his blessing. Jess and Nate closed their eyes, focusing on the energy flowing through them as they channeled the power of the witch's remains. As they began to speak in hushed tones, the air around them seemed to shimmer with unseen forces. The others in the circle felt a strange, tingling sensation course through their bodies as they too were infused with the witch's power. In the name of the witches who summoned you, we now bid you return to the darkness from which you came. Jess shouted, her voice echoing through the attic. By the power of their remains, we command you to return to the spirit realm. As she spoke, a blinding flash of light filled the room, momentarily blinding everyone. When their vision returned, they saw the demon standing before them, its form wavering and flickering like a mirage in the desert. It let out a roar of fury and pain, its eyes burning with hatred. "You fools!" it spat. "You have no idea what you've unleashed." Jess and Nate exchanged a quick glance before turning their attention back to the demon. "Amelia," Nate said, his voice steady despite the fear that threatened to overwhelm him. "You were a part of this, weren't you? You summoned the demon." The demon's form wavered again, and it hesitated for a moment before responding. "Yes," it hissed. "I summoned it, but not for the reasons you think. I did it to free it, to release it from its eternal prison. I am its descendant, just as you are the descendants of those who imprisoned it." The group gasped in shock, their eyes widening with realization. They had been so focused on defeating the demon that they hadn't considered the possibility that Amelia might have been working towards the same goal. The demon sensed their confusion and pressed its advantage. "Kill me, and you will never be free," it warned. "The demon will consume you all, and this town will be its plaything for eternity." Jess and Nate looked at each other, their expressions grim. They knew that Amelia was telling the truth. If they killed her, they would only be replacing her as the vessel for the demon. They had to find another way. "Amelia," Jess said, her voice gentle but firm. "We don't want to hurt you. We just want to stop the demon. Can't we work together to find a way to send it back?" The demon's form wavered again, and it seemed to consider her words. "Very well," it said finally. "You have my attention. But know this, if you fail, or if you betray me, I will not hesitate to finish what I started." Together, Jess and Nate nodded. They exchanged a brief embrace before turning back to the demon. "All right," Nate said, his voice steady. "We need to focus. Amelia, you're a part of the ritual now. Tell us what to do." The demon's form flickered, and it seemed to lose its shape for a moment before reforming. "You must perform the ritual exactly as it was written," it instructed. "Each of you must contribute a part of yourselves to the ceremony. Your fear, your anger, your pain. Once you have given all of yourselves to the ritual, I will be able to guide you through the rest." The group exchanged worried glances, but they knew there was no other choice. They would have to trust Amelia, if only for now. Jess took a deep breath and began to speak the ancient words of the ritual, her voice strong and clear despite the turmoil churning within her. As she spoke, each of her classmates joined her, their voices trembling with emotion as they channeled their deepest fears and darkest emotions into the ceremony. The air around them grew thick with energy, the room seeming to buckle under the pressure of the unleashed power. The demon's form glowed brighter, its outline growing more defined. With a final shout, Jess finished the ritual, her voice hoarse from the effort. The demon's glow intensified, bathing the room in a blinding light. As the light faded, they saw the demon standing before them, its form now solid and unyielding. Its eyes met Jess's, and for a brief moment, they seemed to glow with gratitude. Then, with a flash of red light, it vanished, leaving nothing but a faint whisper of wind in its wake. The group collapsed to the floor, their minds reeling from the experience. They looked at each other in disbelief, wondering if it was really over. But when they heard the distant tolling of the bells, signaling the end of the ritual, they knew that the demon was truly gone. They had saved their town. "Are you okay?" Jess asked Amelia, reaching out to take her hand. The girl looked pale and drained, but she smiled weakly in response. "I'm fine," she said. "Thank you, Jess. I didn't know what else to do." The others nodded in agreement, each of them feeling a strange mixture of relief, exhaustion, and pride. They had faced the demon and survived. They had saved their town. They had grown up. As the sun began to rise over the town, casting its warm, golden light across the attic, the group gathered their things and made their way downstairs. They would have to face the reality of their new lives, but they did so knowing that they had faced the greatest challenge of all and emerged victorious. The bells continued to ring, their song echoing through the streets, heralding the return of peace to the town. As the citizens began to stir, unaware of the events that had transpired in the attic, the group gathered one last time, their faces etched with the memories of what they had done and the knowledge that they would always be bound together by their shared experience. I think it's time we told someone what happened, Nate said, his voice steady. We can't keep this secret forever. The others nodded in agreement, knowing that they had to share their story with the world. But as they turned to leave the house, each of them took one last look back at the attic, their eyes meeting in the knowing glance of those who had been through hell and back together. They knew that no matter what the future held, they would always have this moment, this bond, this memory. And they knew that, as long as they had each other, they could face anything. The wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of autumn leaves and the distant howl of the witch's hunt. The bells continued to ring, their song a solemn reminder of the past and a hopeful promise of the future. And as Jess, Nate, Amelia, and their friends walked out into the world together, they knew that they would never be alone again. The hauntings at Sweetwater High have finally come to an end, but the town of Sweetwater will never be the same. The students have gained a newfound appreciation for the supernatural world and the power of friendship, and they vow to keep each other's secrets as they move on to the next chapter of their lives. The newly graduated Jess and Nate, now holding their diplomas in their hands, walk out of the school for the last time, feeling a mixture of relief, accomplishment, and nostalgia. As the sun begins to set, casting a warm golden light across the town, they make their way to a party being held at the reopened Sweetwater High. The school looks different now, cleaner and more inviting. The chains and padlocks that once barricaded the doors and windows have been removed, and the familiar smell of fresh paint and varnish fills the air. The gymnasium is transformed into a lively gathering spot, with balloons and streamers hanging from the ceiling, music playing in the background, and laughter filling the air. Jess and Nate find a quiet corner to themselves, taking a moment to soak in the atmosphere and reminisce about their harrowing experiences. They exchange knowing glances, understanding that their bond has been forever altered by what they've been through together. It's crazy to think that just a few months ago, we were just regular students, Jess says, taking a sip of her punch. And now look at us. Yeah, I guess we've been through quite a lot, Nate replies, nodding in agreement. But you know what? I'm glad we had each other through it all. I don't know if I could have done it without you. He pauses for a moment, searching for the right words. And I'm really glad we got to the bottom of everything. It's nice to know that we put an end to it. The two friends fall silent for a moment, lost in their thoughts. Around them, the party continues unabated. They watch as their former classmates mingle and celebrate, oblivious to the darkness that once lurked beneath the surface. Jess turns to Nate and smiles. You know, I think we'll always be able to find our way back to each other, no matter where life takes us. Nate returns her smile, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. Yeah, I know what you mean. Friends like us, we're in this together for life. They clink their glasses together, taking a final sip of their drinks. As they set their empty glasses down on a nearby table, they both glance up at the stage, where their eccentric history teacher, Mr. Jenkins, is currently holding court with a particularly animated story. So, Nate begins, you wanna dance or something? He holds out his hand, offering Jess his arm. Without hesitation, she takes it, feeling the familiar spark between them. They find their way to the center of the dance floor, surrounded by their classmates, and begin to dance, lost in the music and the moment. As they spin and twirl, they can't help but feel a sense of hope and joy, knowing that no matter what the future holds, they'll always have each other to lean on. As the night wears on, the party starts to wind down, but Jess and Nate remain, reluctant to leave the place where it all began. They find themselves drawn to a quiet corner of the gymnasium, where a small shrine has been set up in memory of those who didn't make it out alive. Candles flicker in the breeze, casting a warm glow over the photographs and mementos left behind. Jess reaches out and takes Nate's hand, squeezing it gently. You know, she says, her voice barely above a whisper, I think we should say a prayer for them, just to let them know that they're never really gone. Nate nods in agreement, feeling a lump forming in his throat. Together, they bow their heads and close their eyes, offering up a silent prayer for the souls of their lost friends. As they finish their prayer, they feel a sense of peace wash over them, knowing that they've honored the memories of those who didn't survive. They stand up and turn to face each other, smiling softly. You know, Nate says, I think we did pretty well. Jess grins back at him, the light from the candles casting a warm glow across her face. Yeah, I think we did, partner. They lean in, their faces mere inches apart, and share a gentle kiss, their lips lingering just long enough to feel the warmth of the other's breath. As the last few stragglers file out of the gymnasium, Jess and Nate linger in the shadows, savoring the moment and the memories they've shared. They know that the world beyond Sweetwater is a big and scary place, but they also know that they'll always have each other to guide them through it. They may not always be together, but they'll always be connected by the bond they forged in the halls of their high school, and the ghosts of their past will never be able to tear them apart. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and comment below with your thoughts. Have you experienced a spine-chilling horror that left you trembling? Share your terrifying tale with us by emailing nightmarenetwork.com and we'd be thrilled to feature it on our platform.